Hello everyone, welcome to TIFP. Today we have with us a man who breeds development, a man who has trained with Bale, Walcott, Lallana. He is the former Premier League Youth Development Manager and current Fulham's Academy Director. How are you, Mr. Jennings?
Very good, thank you very much.
Okay, over to you, Sid.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the lovely introduction, Archis. And Mr. Jennings, we'll be proceeding with the interview. We have heard so much about you. We have read so much about you. We have seen so many of your great players making their rounds in the Premier League, in the La Liga, in the French League. My first question to you would be, how do you feel when a player at youth level makes it pro? Since the chances of that are so meager. We have seen so many stats which say there's a 0.00 something % of chance of a youth academy player making it pro. How does it feel?
Well, first of all, to say I'm delighted to be here with you guys, and everyone in the UK is really thinking about the challenges that you're facing in India at the moment.
Thank you.
And it's great to be talking about young players making their pathway into senior professional football, because last Saturday, despite a disappointing result for Fulham, it was great to see young Fabio Carvalho, 18 years of age,
Right.
although born in Lisbon, developed by our academy. He joined us when he was 10,
Right.
and it was great to see him make a debut and in the league. And it is incredibly tough. No one should think otherwise. But if you have belief, you work hard, you make the most of opportunities that come your way, and deal with disappointments,
Right.
you give yourself the best chance to succeed.
Okay. And since you were talking about the chances of success, there are a lot of players you must come across that don't make it as a pro, or they are not consistent enough. They leave their journey halfway through. What do you think? How do you counsel a player who cannot make it pro? Is it difficult? Is it a difficult situation, or something that can be done? Because then parents are involved, the family comes to you, and you know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's probably the most demanding part of our roles, and it's something we take very seriously. You need to individualize the experience for the players, and that includes individualizing the time that they leave. And no two cases are the same. There's always different reasons for decisions to be taken.
Right.
And what you have to try to do is to have an exit plan that ensures that the players understand what it is they need to try and work on to improve and develop and succeed somewhere else. And also realistically, what are alternative options if they don't come through in to the professional game.
Right. Okay. And how is it dealing with the parents? Because it must get really difficult to convince them.
Yeah, so we try to be transparent. We try to work collaboratively with parents. Obviously, the
Right.
younger the player, the more time you're spending working with the parents. When the players get over the age of 18,
Right.
they're in the adult world, and you're trying to work with them from that perspective. But I think historically, football clubs wanted to push parents away and not engage them, and not for them to not feel included. And I think that's changed. I think now we accept and understand we
Okay.
have to work collaboratively with parents.
Okay. Makes sense. Okay, Mr. Jennings, I will come to the most asked question that you must have been asked in all the interviews I think that you've given. You've worked with Bale, you've worked with Luke Shaw, who's doing fantastic at Man United. You've worked with Theo Walcott, James Ward-Prowse, who's so deadly on the dead balls, and you've worked with Ox, you've worked with Sessegnon, you've worked with Dembele. How is it developing such young players, and how happy do you feel that they are at a stage of their playing career which is all through to you? How does it feel?
Well, it's definitely not all down to me. I mean, fundamentally, it's down to them making the most of the opportunities that have come their way, and overcoming the disappointments that are inevitably part of every player's journey.
Right.
But look, it's if I reflect back on my 30 years or so in the youth football arena, then I have to pinch myself occasionally when people read out the sort of list of alumni, because it's extraordinary, really. I'm not someone who spends a lot of time looking backwards. I'm always trying to look forward, always trying to learn from what we've been doing to make things better for the future. And I think what I would say is that those players, when they come along, are not only special players, but they're nearly always special people. Right. And what is often special about them is they have a presence, they have an aura, they have an inner drive, an inner belief, and those things don't always come out together at the same time, and you don't always understand that that's a core feature when you start working with them. But over time, you reflect and you realise how special these guys are.
Right. And since like this aura that you're talking about, this is a thing that were in them since they were youth players, or this came later on in their life?
I think it varies, and if I use a couple of examples, so with Moussa Dembele, who you mentioned, he had that presence about him. You felt that you were, you knew that he was someone on a mission who believed in himself, and nothing was going to deter him. And the coming to England was simply part of that journey to give him the tools to then go to that next level. Right. With someone like Gareth Bale, Gareth experienced a lot of real challenges in his younger ages with growth and maturation. Right. And I think at the time we didn't fully appreciate some of those difficulties he was facing. I think there's better diagnosis now and understanding of maturation factors. But you just felt that Gareth just stuck at it, and he in amongst a sort of bit of despair at the time of the frustration he was experiencing, he just stuck at it. So they're two very, very different examples, and most of the players you refer to and others, I could come up with similar situations. So the aura that you reference, it comes out at different times with different people.
Okay. So you have worked in the Premier League as a youth development manager, and you went from being Southampton's academy director, and then you went to Fulham. And I was reading in an interview that you did with the Guardian that the work environment at Fulham is so great. People are laughing around, and there's a football pitch that is right in front of your office. There's a glass in between. How was the switch between the Premier League and Fulham? Like, what made you make that switch? Number one. Number two, how's the working environment?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say when I left Southampton to go to the Premier League, there was a great opportunity at the Premier League, a chance to work at a national level. And on reflection, I think it was probably a bit too early in my career. And I still had a yearning for going back into a club environment. Right. The reason I went to the Premier League is that it was very tough at Southampton with the financial situation of the club. Right. And it became very difficult working environment. Right. The club stuck with its youth program, thankfully, and has recovered very well from those difficult times. So my push to the Premier League was to a good role, but it was on the back of me probably not having completed my club education, really. So the lure into Fulham, when it came along, I felt here was a chance to work in a London club that had ambition to try and create a youth program that would be successful, having had a youth program that perhaps was a little bit under supported. Okay. So when I came into post, it was an opportunity to fashion something that I believed we could help to make the club proud of its youth program. And look, it's been the longest working role I've had in my career, over 12 years. Right. It's been really rewarding because the people I've been working with are fantastic. And the catchment area, the location is terrific, but it's very tough because there's 14 professional clubs in the London area. Right. So competition is really, really challenging. Right.
Okay. So you mentioned about living in difficult times. COVID-19 last year, this year, it was very difficult. And there was a time when there was lockdown in UK and the players went home. So with the senior players, we understand they have a standalone diet plan and everything like that. With the youth players, how did you manage their fitness? And, because they were away from football and not all of them have those facilities at home. So how did you manage? How do you adapt to the challenge?
Well, it's been arguably the most challenging period of my working career. Right. And not because it's for me, but because it's for others. And we're still based here at our at our home location and travelling out to training and games. We don't have offices that we can work out of.
Right.
But what's I think been a driver for us is to try to provide the best service that we can for our youngsters in these difficult circumstances, and some of them have risen amazingly well. You know, the dedication they put into maintaining their fitness, to trying to work independently on their football skills and development, to keep on coming into sort of online learning, where we've done some great things with our program. But, you know, we're back now fully functioning in terms of playing and training, even though we don't have the same infrastructure.
True.
And what we've been able to do what we've seen is some players have really been able to put COVID behind them.
Okay.
And show that they can, that it won't get in their way, and others have found it really tough. And just with reference to that, so we tried to make sure we had a very strong online presence with all our players, but for some they have limited online connectivity.
Right.
For others, they don't have access to, you know, a green space or to a training facility, and they don't have a gym that they could, you know, have at home. Whereas others have got very big gardens where they can almost put a small-sided pitch in.
Right.
So we had to be really mindful of trying to have an individual plan for each player that worked for them.
Okay.
And I think in the majority of cases we've been able to structure that. There's a few who continue to find it really tough, but you know, it's been a big challenge, and I don't think the fallout from COVID will really bear, you know, we'll really understand it for several years to come.
Right. Okay. And do you think when the players came back at a youth level, they were psychologically affected too by the halt and by coming back again?
Some, and particularly those who I think we had a number of international travellers who've had to be away from their families for long extended periods of time. They've not been able to circulate in the community. This is for players in the age groups of 16 to 21.
Right.
And it's been really tough, and I think it's tested a lot of them. I mean, at the moment, I would say the majority of our players have started to come through those difficulties, and you know, I think being able to make good progress. We've had a few who, for instance, have picked up nasty injuries on the back of probably not being able to follow the ideal training regime.
Right.
But slowly but surely we're starting to make progress.
Okay, great. That's good news. And now we'll come to a question that could be really difficult for you to answer. It is, who is the most promising youngster you have worked with till date, and any reasons for that? You don't have to pick one. You could pick a number. You could pick a few if you want.
Yeah, so it is a difficult one. The era at Southampton produced such a depth of talent that it's inevitable I've been drawn to that. There were two waves of talent, really. The wave that included Gareth, Bale, Theo Walcott, Adam Lallana, who you referenced, all similar age group. And then the wave that followed, that I'd left the club by the time they matured, but the likes of Luke Shaw and James Ward-Prowse, Harrison Reed, who's with Fulham at the moment, Calum Chambers, Oxlade-Chamberlain, who you mentioned at Liverpool.
Right.
You know, those two eras were, as I reflect back on it, just extraordinary. You know, I'm not sure at the time we really appreciated how extraordinary they were.
Right.
It's only subsequently that you realise. If I had to select one event, I suppose, out of all of it, then it would be Theo Walcott's debut, having broken the record for the youngest person to appear for Southampton.
Right.
And then the impact he made, not actually initially in that first game, but the almost immediate impact he made on the pitch, it was pretty staggering.
Right.
Gareth followed up pretty quickly after that, but you know, it's certainly that it sticks out in your mind.
Right. Okay, great. Okay, so you were a teacher for 12 years before you came to Southampton. Did the experience help in your future endeavors? Because 12 years is a long time as a teacher.
Yeah, yeah. Well, some would say too long. Yeah. Do you know what? Again, I didn't realise this at the time, but I think that what teaching taught me two things. It taught me the ability to manage lots and lots of different situations. So situations that are very varied, whether they're with young people, whether they're with parents, whether they're with colleagues,
Right.
whether with other schools. And you know, all of those learnings I had in those first 12 years helped enormously in my leadership role. I think my leadership style has been based around what I learnt during that phase as a teacher. I was a senior teacher for a period of time,
Right.
and you get a lot of things thrown at you as a teacher, and you have to think on your feet, and you have to be able to adapt, and you have to, you know, be very agile. And I think that's probably what I was able to take away from my teaching experience and into the managerial role in football when it came along.
Okay. And did you teach a particular age group, or it was varied along your 12 years of experience?
Yeah, so I taught secondary schools in England, which are 11 to 18.
Okay.
I taught history and politics.
Oh my God.
Little did I know that the teaching of politics would help me in football. But what I also had was the opportunity, because I learned, so I studied coaching early and qualified to become a coach, and could coach in a sort of local and regional settings,
Right.
which gave me great experience. Had I been teaching PE, I probably would have just had to stay at the school.
True.
So, you know, I got a lot of really good football learning early into my career.
Okay. Okay. And Huw, was there a favorite club growing up? Obviously there was, but we don't know about it, so we're asking it here.
No, I've historically been a Watford fan.
Okay.
It's very difficult, I think, to be a fan in the roles that I've had. I think you move away from you know, being a typical fan. My father was born in Pinner, which is relatively close to Watford. He took me there as a boy, and it's always been my boyhood club. But these days, I have to say, I probably, as a fan, I follow baseball more than I do being a fan of Watford. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where I could get my fan bit out of the way.
That's great. That's great. It's a good thing that you go to a different sport so that you don't have to support anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, great. Okay, so you do this as a part and parcel of your daily life. The qualities you look for in a player, it could be any age group, in order to judge if they will be pro or not and what level will they reach. Is the quality different for each club that you have been to, or is it the same? Like at Southampton in the Premier League youth development setup, at Fulham, was it the same qualities that you looked for in a set of players, or was it different? Did it keep on changing as the time and the football changed?
So I think you adapt as trends in the game change, and I think you learn also from previous mistakes. And you know, I could give you a list of people who left Fulham or left Southampton who've gone on to done really well, and where we should have retained those players. But actually, what I have learned over the years is that you should do your maximum to keep an open mind on the player's potential for as long as possible. But where unquestionably, what if you go to watch a game, if we both went to watch a game now, I would suggest that we could probably pick the most talented players out and probably agree on those at the time. The trick is the assessment of potential. If you can assess someone's potential, you've got a gift that enables you to look at the here and now and then move to the future. And for me, something that probably is really fundamental now is decision making. You know, I think right away across the spectrum of football, you'll see some players who have good technical skills, they have good physical skills, but their decision making often lets them down. And excuse me, the very best players, in my mind, are those who get the majority of their decisions right. And they, you know, there's that old adage called KISS, keep it simple, stupid. And ultimately, those players who keep the game simple, who make it look simple, are often the best. You know, if you reflect, if you think to other performance skills, I'm sure this might be true with Bollywood, for example. But if you take music, and historically, if I think of a Frank Sinatra or a Whitney Houston, for example, soloists, they just made it look so easy in my mind. It seemed to be effortless for them to sing in the way they did. Actually, it wouldn't have been. It would have been really tough.
True.
But because they made it look so effortless, because they seemed to keep it simple for themselves, they stood out. And I think it's absolutely the same for the most talented players. You know, Ronaldo and Messi have been at the top of the game for so long because they keep making really good decisions and they keep coming up with success.
Right. Okay, that's a really, really good answer. I think a lot of youth players will learn from that, because we get this asked a lot, that what it takes to be a pro footballer or to be there up there. So I think this is great advice for somebody who wants to make it pro.
Yeah, and if it's okay, if I just add something, you know,
Right, sure.
Typically footballers, when they have possession of the ball, they have a lot of options.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking those right options that's part of the right decision. So in possession, you know, you see some players who pass when they should run with it. They run with it when they should pass. They try to beat an opponent, and then having beaten them, they try to beat them again.
True.
And lose possession.
True.
All of these are examples of where players need to think about taking the right decisions. And for young players who are watching and listening to this, what I would suggest is that try to look at some footage of the very best players and see their decision making, what decisions they take, why and when, and the outcome. And that's the way you can help yourself to improve.
Okay, great. So what you were saying is that is there a way that this can be improved, decision making, over the course of training, or is it something that is inbuilt?
Yeah, I think there's an element that's inbuilt, because I think there's an element that some people naturally find decision making easier than others.
Right.
But you can definitely acquire and learn it. You know, I think often the people who learn, if you take people across their careers and see the transformation that they make, then I think you unquestionably get players who improve their decision making over time. And that's because they've learned. They've never stopped learning. The best never ever stop learning. And what they will have done is they will have done two things. They'll have eliminated mistakes, so they'll perhaps have not continued to attempt to do something that wasn't working for them.
True.
They'll have also majored on the things they're good at.
Right.
And if you people make the reference to world-class basics, and what does that mean in practice? It means that, for example, if you are who shall I use? If you're a Luka Modric, who's come from humble beginnings in Croatia, and what you've learned is you've learned to be really good at a set of things in your armory, if you like, in your toolkit that you're good at. So the cross-field ball might not have been something he was good at the start of his career, but he's become better at it, developed it, and enabled it to become the best. And there's other players, and listen, it would be, I don't want to criticize an individual here, but you might look at Raheem Sterling and be thinking, okay, he's having a period in his career at the moment where perhaps he's not making as many good decisions as he did some years ago, and as a result, he's not guaranteed to start for Man City in their big games. And I think there's a contrast between the growth of Modric and Sterling, who at the moment isn't quite having the level of success he'd hoped for.
Right. Okay, great. Okay, so Huw, I'll like to come to the Fulham's youth team that has time and again proven to be a pathway to the senior team. We see so many players breaking through into the senior team. The same was at Southampton. How important is it to have such a system in place where the youngsters can actually look up to playing in the senior team?
Oh, absolutely huge. And listen, it's been very difficult at Fulham because for 6 seasons we've been either fighting for promotion or trying to stave off relegation. So it's really difficult for a head coach to make a commitment to a young player, to give them their bow and to say, okay, you know, I'm going to believe in you over a senior player who, shall we say, might not make a mistake to lead to a goal. You know, but I think it's fair to say with the majority of young players who've broken into the team, they've added something slightly different. And the head coaches who've given them their chance have recognised this. And, you know, hopefully someone like Fabio Carvalho between now and the end of the season, if he gets further opportunities, he can do so to help us create and score goals, which has been a difficulty for us this season. So, you know, that if I reflect back to what players offered us, I mean, we've we've had very great success with goalkeepers at Fulham at the moment. Areola is the number one who's on loan, but we've had Marek Rodak, Marcus Bettinelli, Jesse Joronen. We've had goalkeepers who have come in because the coaches have seen what they can give to the team.
Right.
In Marcus's case, he's a great communicator with his defenders, and he's got a real presence. With Marek has got wonderful physical skills that enable him to make saves that other goalkeepers can't, and his distribution has really come on. Excuse me. So, you get examples of what is it that they can offer which other players in the squad can't. And that has to be what we're in the academy striving for, is to ensure that the players that we develop, they offer something individual to them that a head coach wants to utilize.
Right. Okay. So do you think winning mentality is something that should be instilled in youth players from the start in order for them to get used to the idea of winning? Because, their future has to be playing somewhere which is at a pro level, where winning is the only thing that matters. Do you think it should be instilled in youth players?
Yeah, so there's a real balance here between a winning mentality, which is absolutely critical, and winning at all costs. So we're very clear, and we've had a lot of good success with youth teams over the years. But we're clear that it is not about winning at all costs. So when you get to a senior level, it's all about the winning of the 3 points or taking a 1 point.
Right.
It's at a youth development level, it has to be about developing a winning mentality, and sometimes losing helps you to understand how important it is to want to experience winning and what you learn from winning. You probably learn more from losing about yourself and the people around you. And we're very clear that the program we've developed will enable all our players to experience almost every aspect of that continuum, from absolute delight of winning to terrible disappointment. And it's how you deal with that matters more than anything. If you can show that you can deal with all of those emotions and use them to your advantage over time, you give yourself a chance to succeed.
Okay. And Huw, you talk about a program that is in place at the academy level. Was there a different program before you came in, and after that, did you change that to an extent and make it what it is today?
Yeah, I think that's probably true. I think before I came to Fulham, I think there was not enough emphasis on developing winners, and that I think it was perhaps an environment where the expectations were not as high as they could be.
Okay.
And it covers a little bit of one of the previous questions, to saying to you that when players come into our environment, it doesn't matter what their starting point is, it matters about where they get to. And we are clear that we will set what we hope are world-class standards. That we set, this is if you set the bar here, then more people maybe get over the bar, which is fine to a degree. But if you set the bar here, then if players can't get over it, they sort of deselect themselves. But people strive to get over it. And the more you strive to get over the bar, the harder you work for it, the more success potentially you can create. And I think the setting of expectations is really, really pivotal to long-term success.
Okay. And a question that we get a lot from the coaches in India and other parts of the world, it is that how do you maintain that, there's a thin line between being aggressive to get results, and there's being, just behind the line to not say too much, but then convey your message. So does aggressiveness help in football? Because sometimes we see some coaches who are very aggressive with their team and they do get the result, but I'm talking at a youth level. Is it right? Or should they research more into their football methods and then go across? How does it work out? What do you think?
Yeah, so I think the primary message is the game is about the players, and the coach is there to facilitate the opportunity for the players. Now, sometimes as a coach, you have to assert yourself. I prefer assertiveness than aggression. Aggression to me is connected with anger and being out of control. And so, but if you're sometimes you have to be assertive, and you need to know your players to know which players you can be assertive with and when, and which are the players that you hold back from, and maybe instead of talking to them in front of a group, you deal with them separately on their own.
Right.
And that's the skill of a coach and the skill of understanding the the nature of your players.
Mm-hmm.
But I go back to something that I think is really critical. So what you see when we have full stadia and you see managers, if you like, appearing to be aggressive, as you described.
Right.
You know, I remember a conversation with Gordon Strachan many years ago where I asked him about his touchline approach, and he said, "Huw, it's never for the players; it's only ever for the crowd." He said,
Okay.
"I will have a go at a referee about a decision because that will get the crowd going,
Crowd pump.
and
Okay.
that gives then the team a lift."
Right.
And he said, and he was very clever the way in which he identified that.
Right.
And I would say to you, in full stadia, when managers are shouting and screaming on the touchline, it's more for effect than it is for the reality of the coaching points they're able to make.
Right.
If your work is not done in the week of preparation leading to the game, or the few days preparation,
True.
that's how you're judged, by the work you do in the lead up, not by
Right.
what you do on the sideline.
Right. And nowadays we see a lot of coaches sitting in the dugout and just checking matches on the iPad and any fouls. And we see Ole doing that a lot. He's just on his seat and he's on his iPad. I think that's how the game has changed.
Yeah. Which coach did you say?
Ole
Sorry.
Gunnar Solskjaer for United.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, and I think you see a variety. You used to see managers sit in the stand to get a better vision of the pitch, so that you could see the tactical setup. Obviously, the video camera provides that aerial view now. So it's. But I think if you asked most coaches what they thought their impact could be from the touchline, I think it's pretty symbolic. It's not that they believe they can make monumental impacts to an individual. And studies of this have shown that the coach nearly always talks to the players closest to them than they do the players furthest away.
Right.
And you know that shows really that the impact is bound to be limited. I think you've got more studious coaches now than was the case some time ago. And when I say studious, they look at data, they look at video, they look at patterns. True. They have a bigger team around them that helps analyze the performance. Right. They're more reflective in the way in which they are with their relationships. So I think all of those things are now the makeup of a modern head coach.
Okay. Huw, two quick questions since we have come to the end of the interview. The first one is for the UEFA Champions League. What are your predictions? Who's going to win it? Since we are so close to the final.
Yeah. Oh well, that's a good question. I have to say I still have a sneaking feeling for PSG.
Okay.
Manchester. Guardiola has had problems, hasn't he, in the later stages of the Champions League since leaving Barcelona, and I just wonder if there's another twist. Okay.
And what about the Euros that start in June?
Well, look, everything is. I mean, even now, the latest position with England potentially could play nearly all the games at home. I mean, you know, it's a great opportunity for England to do that. I'm a bit biased because I have Welsh heritage, so I'd love to see Wales do well and challenge. But in reality, I think that if it's going to be England's moment, now is the time. Okay.
Huw, we are done with the interview. Thank you so much. I'll like to get Archis on the line just to say his goodbyes. Archie, are you here?
Sure.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Mr. Huw Jennings, for your time. I'm sure the Indian Football Portal viewers will have gained valuable insight from this interaction. And stay safe. We hope to have a chat with you again in the near future. And don't worry, it's coming home.
Excellent. We hope so. We certainly hope so. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed that, guys. Thanks very much, and stay safe and good luck for the podcast.